The diplomatic vessel Harmony moved through space like a silver needle threading through dark fabric. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, watching the strange planet grow larger on the main screen. Zethkar looked nothing like Earth. Thick, purple mists swirled around the entire world, hiding whatever lay beneath. Lightning flickered constantly through the clouds, but it was not the yellow-white lightning of Earth. This lightning glowed soft blue and green, like underwater fire. "Captain, we're getting some interference with our systems," reported Lieutenant Kim from the communication station. She frowned at her displays. "The atmospheric energy is stronger than we expected. It's affecting our equipment." Elena nodded. They had known this mission would be challenging. First contact with the Zethkari was humanity's most important diplomatic mission in 50 years. These aliens had sent a single message to Earth. "Come to us if you wish to trade in knowledge. Come alone if you wish to live." Not exactly a warm welcome, but the potential for learning was too great to ignore. Dr. Marcus Chen sat at his workstation near the back of the bridge, checking his translation equipment one more time. As the mission's xenobiologist and language specialist, he would be responsible for communicating with the aliens. His equipment used advanced artificial intelligence to analyze speech patterns and create real-time translations. It had worked perfectly with the 3 other alien species humanity had encountered, but those had all been humanoid races with similar vocal structures. "Dr. Chen, how are your systems looking?" Elena asked. Marcus looked up from his displays. "Everything seems normal, Captain. The AI is running full diagnostics and should be ready for any language structure we encounter." He was a quiet man in his early 40s, with gentle eyes and graying hair. He had spent most of his career studying how different species communicated, and he was genuinely excited about meeting the Zethkari. The ship shuddered slightly as they entered the upper atmosphere. The purple mists were thicker than they had appeared from space, and visibility dropped to nearly zero. The bridge crew watched their instruments carefully as the ship descended toward the coordinates the aliens had provided. "Something's wrong with the translation system," Marcus said suddenly, his voice tight with concern. His displays were flashing red warnings. "The atmospheric interference is scrambling the AI's neural networks. It's not responding to commands." Elena felt her stomach drop. Without the translation system, they would have no way to communicate with the Zethkari. The mission would be over before it began. "Can you fix it?" Marcus worked frantically at his controls, but the damage was spreading through the system. "I'm sorry, Captain. The AI is completely offline. It will take days to repair, maybe weeks." "What about manual translation?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer would not be good. "I have basic training in xenolinguistics, but without the AI support." Marcus shook his head. "I can try, but it will be very limited. Simple concepts only, and probably with many mistakes." The ship broke through the lower cloud layer, and suddenly they could see the surface of Zethkar. The landscape was unlike anything they had ever seen. Massive structures rose from the ground, but they looked grown rather than built. They curved and twisted like enormous plants, glowing with the same blue-green light as the lightning above. Rivers of luminescent liquid flowed between the structures, creating patterns that seemed almost like writing. "By all the stars," whispered Lieutenant Kim. "It's beautiful." In the center of the largest structure cluster stood what could only be described as a palace. It towered hundreds of meters into the air, its walls shifting and flowing like living tissue. Spires twisted upward from its roof, each one pulsing with different colors of light. The Harmony landed in a clearing near the palace. The ground beneath them felt solid, but it glowed softly as if lit from within. As soon as the engines shut down, they could see movement in the distance. The Zethkari were coming to meet them. Elena, Marcus, and 2 security officers walked down the ship's ramp. The air was warm and slightly humid, filled with a sweet scent like flowers mixed with ozone. The gravity was lighter than Earth's, making each step feel bouncy and strange. The Zethkari approached slowly. There were dozens of them, but they stayed back, forming a large circle around the landing area. Only one came forward, and it was clear that this individual was their leader. She was magnificent and terrifying at the same time. She stood nearly 3 meters tall, her body covered in dark chitinous plates that reflected light like black mirrors. Multiple eyes dotted her elongated head, each one glowing with amber light. Her arms were long and graceful, ending in hands that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. When she moved, her entire body rippled with bioluminescent patterns, creating waves of color across her surface. Behind her head rose a crown-like structure made of the same chitinous material, but this was decorated with what looked like living jewels that pulsed with their own inner light. She wore no clothing, but her natural armor was so intricately patterned that it looked like the finest art humanity had ever created. A device at her throat crackled to life, speaking in accented but understandable English. "I am Queen Veltara, the hideous ruler of the Forsaken Ones, leader of the ugly swarm. You are the humans from the distant star." Marcus stepped forward, trying to hide his fascination. He had never seen anything so alien, yet so clearly intelligent and regal. "Your Majesty, I am Dr. Marcus Chen. We are honored to meet you and your people." The Queen's multiple eyes focused on him, and the patterns on her body shifted to deeper, darker colors. "Why do your kind stare so openly at us? Are we not repulsive? Enough for you? Do we not make you sick with our hideous forms?" Marcus blinked in surprise. He looked at the Queen again, taking in her graceful movements, the intricate patterns that flowed across her body like living art, the way her bioluminescence created an aura of light around her. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "you are absolutely beautiful." The Queen jerked back as if she had been struck. Her bioluminescent patterns flared bright red, and a sound came from her throat that the translator could not interpret. When she spoke again, her voice carried what sounded like pain. "Why do you mock me, small creature? Why do you speak words that make no sense? We are the ugly ones. We are the Forsaken. We are everything that should be hidden from sight." Marcus shook his head, his expression gentle and sincere. "I'm not mocking you, Your Majesty. I'm speaking the truth as I see it. Your form is like nothing we have on Earth, but that doesn't make it ugly. The way light moves across your body is like watching the aurora. Your movements are as graceful as flowing water. Your eyes shine like stars." The other Zethkari in the circle began making sounds among themselves, their own bioluminescent patterns shifting and changing. The Queen's translator struggled with their rapid speech, catching only fragments. "Impossible. The small ones see differently. What does it mean?" Queen Veltara raised one flowing hand and the others fell silent. She stared at Marcus for a long moment, her amber eyes seeming to search his face for any sign of deception. "You truly see us as not hideous?" "I see you as remarkable," Marcus replied. "Different from us, yes, but remarkable and beautiful in your own way." The Queen's patterns shifted again, this time to colors Marcus had not seen before. Deep purples and blues that seemed to pulse with some internal rhythm. "This is impossible," she whispered. "You speak madness, human, but your eyes do not show disgust or fear. How can this be?" Captain Elena stepped forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps we could continue this conversation somewhere more comfortable? We have come a long way to meet you and your people." The Queen looked between Elena and Marcus, her pattern still shifting with what seemed like confusion. "Yes," she said finally. "Yes, come to the palace. We will speak more of this impossibility. But be warned, humans, if you lie to us, if this is some cruel game, we will know, and the penalty for mocking the Forsaken is severe." As they walked toward the glowing palace, Marcus noticed that the other Zethkari were following at a distance, their bioluminescent patterns creating a moving constellation in the dim light. He could hear them communicating among themselves in their light language, rapid flashes and pulses that the broken translator could not begin to interpret. The Queen moved beside him, her tall form casting strange shadows on the luminescent ground. "Tell me, human," she said quietly, "on your world, what is considered beautiful?" Marcus thought for a moment. "Many things. The way sunlight looks on water, the patterns that frost makes on windows, the colors of flowers, the faces of people we love. But mostly I think we find beauty in things that are unique, things that show the incredible creativity of life itself. The Queen's patterns shifted again, this time to a softer glow. Creativity of life, she repeated slowly. These are strange words to us. We have forgotten such concepts long ago. As they approached the palace entrance, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he had just stumbled onto something much larger and more tragic than a simple first contact mission. The way the Queen spoke of herself and her people, the pain in her voice when he called her beautiful, the way the other aliens seemed amazed that he could look at them without disgust. It all pointed to something. The palace corridors were alive with movement and light. The walls themselves pulsed gently, like the inside of some great living creature. Marcus walked beside Queen Veltara, trying to understand everything he was seeing. The floor beneath. Their feet felt warm and slightly soft, and it glowed with each step they took. Strange growths hung from the ceiling, dripping with luminescent liquid that pooled into channels carved along the walls. "Your palace is incredible," Marcus said, looking around in wonder. "Did you build all of this?" The Queen's pattern shifted to darker colors. "We did not build. We grew. We are not capable of true construction, only of coaxing life into shapes that serve us. It is crude work, but it shelters us from the light of day." Marcus frowned. The palace was one of the most beautiful structures he had ever seen, but the Queen spoke of it like it was something shameful. "This isn't crude at all. The way you've shaped living material into architecture is amazing. It's like the most advanced biotechnology we could ever imagine." "You use strange words, human," Queen Veltara said quietly. "Advanced. Amazing. These concepts do not apply to the work of the Forsaken." They entered a large chamber where other Zethkari waited. These aliens were smaller than the Queen, but they all shared the same chitinous bodies and flowing movements. Their bioluminescent patterns were dimmer, and they kept their heads lowered when the Queen approached. Marcus noticed that they stayed in the shadows, as if trying to hide themselves. "These are my advisors," the Queen said. "They will listen to our words and help me understand your strange speech." She gestured with one flowing hand, and the advisors arranged themselves in a circle around the room. "Now, human, you must explain this madness you speak. How can you look upon us and not feel disgust?" Marcus sat down on what seemed to be a living chair that adjusted itself to his body. The Queen settled across from him, her multiple eyes fixed on his face. The other Zethkari watched from their positions around the room, their patterns flickering with what seemed like nervous energy. "Your Majesty, may I ask you something first?" Marcus said. "How did your people learn that you were ugly? Who taught you this?" The Queen's patterns went completely dark for a moment, then flared with deep red colors. "You ask about the great truth that all children learn from birth. We are taught by our mothers, who were taught by their mothers, who learned from the Vialtor when they came to save the galaxy from our hideous presence." "The Vialtor?" Marcus asked. He had never heard that name before. "The beautiful ones, the symmetrical gods. They came to our world many generations ago, when our ancestors were even more horrible than we are now." The Queen's voice carried deep pain. "They showed us what true beauty was. Smooth skin, 2 eyes placed properly, single mouths, limbs that did not shift and change. They taught us the correct words for what we were. Abominations, monsters, creatures that should be hidden from decent sight." Marcus felt his heart sink as he began to understand. "The Vialtor told you that you were ugly?" "They did not need to tell us. We could see the truth when we looked at them." The Queen's patterns shifted through several colors. They were perfect, tall and straight, with skin like polished metal and eyes like diamonds. When they stood beside us, our hideousness became obvious to all. Even our younglings could see how wrong we were. One of the advisors stepped forward, their patterns dim and flickering. Through the broken translator, Marcus heard fragmented words. "The Vialtor brought peace, taught us to hide, gave us words." "Yes," the Queen said. "Before the Vialtor came, We did not even understand our own ugliness. We lived in ignorance, thinking our forms were normal. But they opened our eyes to the truth. They gave us new words to describe ourselves properly, hideous ones forsaken the ugly swarm. They changed our language so we could speak truth about our nature. Marcus was beginning to understand something terrible. What happened to the Veiltor? Where are they now? The Queen's patterns dimmed. They left us long ago. They said they had taught us enough, that we could continue to improve ourselves by staying hidden and remembering our lessons. They went to bring their wisdom to other ugly races across the galaxy. And you've been calling yourselves ugly ever since? For over 3,000 years, the Queen confirmed. It is the foundation of our society. Our children learn from birth to hide in darkness, to speak only the truth about their hideous forms, to never presume they could be anything but shameful creatures. Marcus looked around the chamber at the other Zethkari. They were all watching him with their glowing eyes, but their body language showed fear and confusion. Your Majesty, what if I told you that the Veiltor were wrong? The chamber fell completely silent. Every bioluminescent pattern in the room went dark except for the Queen's, which flared bright red. You speak blasphemy, human. The Veiltor were perfect beings. They could not be wrong about something so obvious. But what if beauty isn't just one thing? Marcus asked gently. On my world, we have creatures that live deep in the ocean where no light reaches. They have their own light, just like you do. We think they're some of the most beautiful creatures on Earth. We have insects with multiple eyes and hard shells, and we find them fascinating and wonderful. The Queen's translator struggled with these concepts. The words came out strange and broken. You speak of finding wonder in dark things. This makes no sense. Only the symmetrical ones can be. The word does not translate. Beautiful, Marcus said. The word you're looking for is beautiful. But Your Majesty, beauty isn't just symmetry. It's not just smooth skin and two eyes. Beauty is diversity. Beauty is uniqueness. Beauty is the amazing creativity of life itself. One of the younger advisors made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. Their patterns were flickering rapidly between different colors. The Queen spoke sharply to them in the light language, and they immediately dimmed their patterns and stepped back. What did they say? Marcus asked. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. They said that when you speak these words, they feel something strange, a sensation we have no name for. It is not pain, but it is not comfort either. It makes them want to look at themselves differently. That sensation might be hope, Marcus said softly. Hope. The Queen's pattern shifted to colors Marcus had never seen before. We know this word, but it does not apply to creatures like us. Hope is for those who might become better. We are already at our lowest point. There is nowhere to go but deeper, into shame. Marcus stood up slowly and walked closer to the Queen. She tensed, her patterns going dark, but she didn't move away. Your Majesty, may I tell you what I see when I look at you? You have already spoken your strange lies, human. Not lies. Truth. When I look at you, I see patterns that change and flow like art. I see eyes that glow with intelligence and wisdom. I see graceful movements that would be impossible for any creature from my world. I see someone who has ruled her people with kindness for what must be many years, someone who cares deeply about her subjects. The Queen's patterns began to pulse, and Marcus realized she was trembling. Stop, she whispered. These words, they hurt. They make me feel things that cannot be real. What if they are real? Marcus asked. What if the Veiltor didn't teach you truth? What if they taught you lies? The Queen stood up suddenly, her tall form towering over Marcus. Her patterns were chaotic now, flashing through dozens of colors. Impossible. If the Veiltor lied, then everything we believe, everything we are, everything we have taught our children for 3,000 years, would be wrong. Marcus finished quietly. And you would be exactly what you always were. A beautiful, unique, intelligent species that was tricked into hating yourselves. The chamber erupted in sound as every Zethkari began communicating. At once, their bioluminescent patterns creating a storm of light. The queen raised her hands and gradually they fell silent, but Marcus could see that his words had affected them all. "Human," the queen said, her voice barely above a whisper. "If what you say is true, then the Veiltor committed the cruelest crime imaginable. They stole our ability to see ourselves clearly. They poisoned our minds against our own forms." "I think that's exactly what they did," Marcus said. "And I think they did it to control you. A people who believe they are worthless will never challenge those who claim to be superior." The queen sank back down onto her living throne, her patterns dim and confused. But how could we have been so blind? How could an entire species forget what they really were? "Because children believe what adults teach them," Marcus said gently. "And those children grew up and taught their children the same lies. Generation after generation until the lies became truth in everyone's mind." One of the advisors approached cautiously, their patterns flickering with nervous energy. They spoke rapidly in the light language, and the queen translated. "They ask, if we are not actually hideous, why do we feel pain when you call us beautiful?" Marcus thought about this. "Maybe because part of you knows the truth, but you've been trained to reject it. Maybe it hurts because you're fighting against 3,000 years of lies." The queen looked around at her advisors, then back at Marcus. "Human, you have brought dangerous ideas to our world. Ideas that could destroy everything we believe about ourselves. Or ideas that could—" 3 days had passed since Marcus first spoke those dangerous words to Queen Veltara. Now he sat in the palace's great library, surrounded by towering shelves that seemed to grow from the floor itself. The books were not like human books. They were living crystals that glowed with stored information, and touching them would transfer their knowledge directly into a reader's mind. The queen had given him access to their entire history, hoping he might find some proof of what he claimed. Marcus was amazed by what he discovered. The Zethkari had once been master artists, scientists, and philosophers. Before the Veiltor arrival, their civilization had created wonders that rivaled anything humanity had achieved. But all of that had been forgotten, buried under centuries of shame. "Dr. Chen?" Captain Elena's voice came through his communicator. "How are things going down there?" Marcus touched the device at his ear. "Elena, you need to see this. I'm sending you some of the historical records I've found. The Zethkari weren't always like this. They used to celebrate their uniqueness." Back on the ship, Elena studied the images Marcus transmitted. Ancient Zethkari art showed beings proud of their forms, creating sculptures and paintings that highlighted their natural bioluminescence and flowing movements. Their cities had been designed to enhance their beauty, not hide it. "This is incredible, Marcus," Elena said. "But how do we help them remember?" "I'm not sure yet," Marcus replied. "The conditioning runs very deep. Even when I show them evidence of their past glory, they can't seem to process it properly. Their language literally doesn't have words for positive self-image." Marcus heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Queen Veltara approaching. Her patterns were dim today, cycling through muted colors that seemed to reflect confusion and pain. Over the past 3 days, she had been struggling with the ideas Marcus had introduced. "Human," she said quietly, settling onto a living chair that adjusted to her form. "I have been studying the records you requested. I see images of my ancestors, but I cannot understand them." Marcus pulled out his tablet and showed her a holographic projection of an ancient Zethkari celebration. Hundreds of the aliens danced together, their bioluminescent patterns creating waves of synchronized light across a vast plaza. They moved with joy and pride, their forms celebrated rather than hidden. "This is your people, from 4,000 years ago," Marcus explained. "Before the Veiltor came, look how they move, how they celebrate their natural light." Queen Veltara stared at the image, her multiple eyes focusing intently. "I see creatures that look like us, but they behave strangely. They do not hide in shadows. They make their light bright instead of dim. Why would they do this? Because they were proud of who they were, Marcus said gently. They saw their bioluminescence as beautiful, not shameful. The queen's patterns shifted through several colors before settling on a deep blue that Marcus had learned meant sadness. But if they were proud, they were wrong. The Veiltor showed us the truth about our hideous nature. Marcus had been thinking about this problem for days. The Zethkari couldn't simply be told they were wrong. Their neural pathways had been conditioned for generations to reject positive self-perception. He needed a different approach. Your Majesty, may I try something different? Instead of talking about beauty and ugliness, let me show you how humans see the natural world. Marcus activated his tablet's projection system and began showing images from Earth. First came pictures of deep-sea creatures, jellyfish with translucent bodies that glowed with their own light, fish with multiple eyes and bioluminescent patterns, coral reefs that grew in impossible shapes and colors. These creatures live in the deepest parts of our oceans, Marcus explained. They never see sunlight, so they make their own light, just like you do. Humans travel thousands of miles and risk their lives just to see them because we find them so beautiful. Queen Veltara studied the images carefully. These creatures, they have multiple eyes like us. They glow like us. But you call them beautiful? Absolutely, look at this one. Marcus showed her a picture of a bioluminescent jellyfish, its bell-shaped body pulsing with blue and green light. See how its light flows across its surface? It reminds me of the patterns on your body when you move. For the first time since their conversations began, the queen's patterns brightened slightly. She leaned forward to study the image more closely. The light, it does move like ours. Marcus showed her more images. Fireflies creating clouds of light in earth forests, aurora dancing across polar skies, crystals that formed in geometric patterns deep underground. With each image, he explained how humans found beauty in things that were unique, unusual, and different from themselves. But these are not people, the queen said. You do not share your homes with these creatures. You do not treat them as equals. You're right, Marcus admitted. But let me show you something else. He pulled up images of human art inspired by these natural wonders. Paintings that captured the flow of jellyfish, sculptures that mimicked crystal formations, architecture that incorporated bioluminescent elements. Humans create art based on the beauty we see in nature, Marcus explained. We're so inspired by these creatures that we try to imitate them in our own work. The queen was quiet for a long time, studying the images. Marcus could see her patterns, cycling through colors he had never observed before. Not the usual dark blues and reds of shame and confusion, but lighter shades that seemed to pulse with something like curiosity. Show me more, she said quietly. Marcus spent the next hour showing the queen images of Earth's incredible diversity. Insects with chitinous bodies that reflected rainbow light, plants that glowed in the darkness, formations of rock and ice that created natural sculptures. With each image, he explained how humans found wonder and beauty in the endless creativity of life. Your species seems to find beauty in very strange places, the queen observed. Her patterns were brighter now, though. She seemed unaware of the change. We find beauty everywhere, Marcus replied, in things that are symmetrical and asymmetrical, smooth and textured, familiar and completely alien. Beauty isn't about following rules. It's about appreciating the incredible variety of existence. The queen touched one of the library's crystal books, and Marcus saw information flow into her mind. When she looked up, her expression had changed subtly. I have just accessed records of human art and architecture. Your species creates in many different styles, celebrates many different forms. Exactly. We don't believe there's only one way to be beautiful. The queen stood up and began pacing, her movements more fluid than Marcus had seen before. But the Veiltor taught us that beauty has specific requirements. 2 eyes, smooth skin, symmetrical features. They showed us examples from across the galaxy. What if they only showed you species that looked like them? Marcus suggested. What if they deliberately hid the diversity that really exists in the galaxy? The queen stopped pacing. Her patterns went through a rapid cycle of colors, and Marcus realized she was accessing more crystal records. There are gaps in our historical archives, she said slowly. Periods where records were edited by Vieltor scholars. They said they were removing false information. They were removing anything that might help you see the truth about yourselves, Marcus said. At that moment, several younger Zethkari entered the library. Marcus had noticed them hanging around the edges of conversations over the past few days, clearly curious about his words, but too afraid to approach directly. They stayed in the shadows, their patterns dim and nervous. "Your Majesty," one of them said through the translator, "we have been listening to the humans' words. Some of us have been looking at ourselves differently." The Queen's patterns flared with what looked like alarm. "What do you mean?" The young Zethkari stepped forward slightly, though they remained in the shadows. "When the human shows us pictures of creatures that glow like us and calls them beautiful, for just a moment we almost see ourselves as what?" the Queen asked, her voice tense. "As not completely hideous," the young alien whispered. "But then the feeling goes away, and we feel ashamed for thinking such thoughts." Marcus felt his heart racing. This was the breakthrough he had been hoping for. "That feeling you describe, the moment before the shame returns, that's your true perception trying to surface. The shame is what you learned. The other feeling is what's real." More young Zethkari began entering the library, drawn by voices of their companion. Soon there were dozens of them, all staying in the shadows but clearly listening intently to every word. "Human," one of them said, "if what you say is true, why does it hurt to think of ourselves as not ugly? Why does it feel wrong?" Marcus thought carefully about how to answer. "Because you've been trained since birth to reject positive thoughts about yourselves. It's like, imagine if someone told you that breathing was wrong, and you believed them so strongly that every breath caused you pain. The breathing would still be natural and necessary, but you'd suffer every time you did it." The Queen looked around at all the young faces watching from the shadows. "They are asking dangerous questions, human. Questions that could destroy their understanding of reality. Or questions that could free them from a false reality," Marcus replied. "Your Majesty, these young ones are all The revolution that began in the library spread through the palace like wildfire. Within hours, young Zethkari were gathering in groups, whispering to each other in their light language about the impossible ideas the human had shared. Their bioluminescent patterns were brighter than they had been in generations, creating beautiful displays of color that hadn't been seen since before the Vieltor arrival. But with this awakening came pain. Marcus found Queen Veltara in her private chambers, curled on the floor in obvious distress. Her patterns were chaotic, flashing rapidly between bright colors and complete darkness. When she tried to speak, her translator couldn't keep up with the rapid changes in her voice. "Your Majesty, what's happening?" Marcus asked, kneeling beside her. "The children. They're saying they're beautiful, and when they do, I feel..." The Queen's patterns flared bright for a moment, then went dark again. "I feel something breaking inside my mind. Like walls I didn't know existed are cracking apart." Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's medical officer, had come down from the Harmony to help. She ran her scanner over the Queen and frowned at the readings. "Dr. Chen, her neural activity is off the charts. It's like her brain is rewiring itself in real time." Marcus understood what was happening. The conditioning isn't just psychological, is it? The Vieltor actually changed your brain structure. Somehow. The Queen managed to steady her patterns long enough to speak clearly. "They gave us treatments, said it was to help us think more clearly about our ugliness. Every child received them for generations." "Neural programming," Dr. Kim said grimly. "They physically altered your brain chemistry to make positive self-perception painful. That's why it hurts when you try to see yourselves as beautiful." Marcus felt sick. The Vieltor hadn't just lied to the Zethkari. They had performed surgery on their minds, making it literally impossible for them to love themselves. It was the cruelest form of slavery he could imagine. "Can you help her?" Marcus asked Dr. Kim. "I'm not sure. This kind of neural conditioning, it's been reinforced for thousands of years. Breaking it might be dangerous." The queen forced herself to sit up, though her patterns continued to flicker wildly. Dangerous or not, it must be done. I cannot watch my people tear themselves apart, between truth and lies. Indeed, throughout the palace, other Zethkari were experiencing similar distress. The older ones with deeper conditioning were suffering the most. Some had collapsed completely, their minds unable to process the conflict between what they were feeling and what they had been taught to believe. But the younger ones were adapting faster. Marcus could hear their voices echoing through the corridors, as they discovered words and concepts their language had forgotten. They were creating new terms for beauty, for pride, for self-love. Ideas that had been systematically removed from their culture. Human, the queen said, grabbing Marcus's hand with her flowing fingers. You must help us. If this conditioning can be broken, if we can truly see ourselves as you see us, then show us how. Marcus looked at Dr. Kim. Is there anything we can do? Dr. Kim studied her readings again. Theoretically, if we could provide positive reinforcement, while dampening the pain response, the brain might be able to form new pathways, but it would require constant exposure to positive stimuli while the neural networks reorganize. What kind of positive stimuli? Marcus asked. Mirrors, the queen said suddenly. Her patterns brightened as the idea formed. We need mirrors, but not the kind we have used for shame. Mirrors that show us truth instead of lies. Marcus didn't understand at first, but then he remembered something from his studies of human psychology. You mean we need to show you yourselves the way we see you? Constant positive reflection until your brains accept it as truth. Yes, the queen whispered. But how? Marcus thought for a moment, then activated his communicator. Captain Vasquez, I need you to gather the entire crew. We're going to need everyone for this. An hour later, the palace's great hall was filled with humans and Zethkari. The aliens stayed mostly in the shadows, their patterns dim with fear and hope mixed together. The humans stood in the center, looking uncertain but determined. Here's what we're going to do, Marcus announced. Every human will be paired with a Zethkari partner. Your job is simple. Look at your partner and tell them truthfully what you see. Don't exaggerate, don't lie, but don't hold back either. Tell them about their grace, their beauty, their uniqueness. Captain Elena stepped forward. Dr. Chen, are you sure this will work? I don't know, Marcus admitted. But the Veiltor broke their minds by telling them lies consistently over generations. Maybe we can fix their minds by telling them the truth just as consistently. Queen Veltara stood up slowly, her patterns still chaotic but growing steadier. I will be the first, she announced. If this kills me, at least my people will know that someone tried to free them. Marcus approached the queen and looked up into her multiple amber eyes. Your Majesty, you are magnificent. Your carapace reflects light like the finest jewels. Your movements are more graceful than anything in nature. Your eyes hold wisdom and kindness. Your patterns tell stories more beautiful than any art humans have ever created. The queen's patterns flared bright, then went dark, then flared again. She made a sound of pain, but she didn't move away. Continue, she whispered. Your height gives you natural majesty. Your voice carries the authority of someone who cares deeply for her people. Your willingness to risk everything for their freedom shows courage beyond anything I've ever seen. Other humans began approaching the Zethkari, speaking similar words. Lieutenant Kim told her partner about the elegant way they moved through space. Engineer Rodriguez marveled at the complexity of their bioluminescent communication. Dr. Sarah, Kim explained to her partner how their multiple eyes allowed them to see beauty from many angles at once. At first, the Zethkari could barely tolerate the positive words. Many of them collapsed, their neural conditioning fighting against the new input. But slowly, something began to change. The pain responses became weaker. The bright patterns lasted longer before fading to darkness. It's working, Dr. Kim reported, monitoring Queen Veltara's vital signs. Her brain is forming new neural pathways. The conditioning is being overwritten. Hours passed. The humans took turns so their voices wouldn't grow tired, maintaining constant streams of honest admiration and wonder. They spoke about the aliens' natural armor, their graceful appendages, their living architecture, their gentle nature despite their imposing size. And gradually the Zethkari began to change. Their patterns grew brighter and more stable. They began to stand straighter, move with more confidence. Some even started to look directly at their human partners instead of keeping their eyes downcast. The breakthrough came when Queen Veltara suddenly stepped into the full light of the hall. Her patterns blazed with colors Marcus had never seen before, brilliant golds and silvers that made her look like a living constellation. She looked around at her people, then at the humans, and for the first time, her voice carried no shame. "I am beautiful," she said quietly. The word sent shockwaves through the assembled Zethkari. Their patterns exploded with light as the Queen's declaration gave them permission to see themselves clearly. One by one, they began to step out of the shadows. "I am not hideous," one young alien said, their voice full of wonder. "My light is my art," said another. "We are unique and precious," declared a third. Queen Veltara walked to the center of the hall, her movements fluid and confident. She looked at Marcus with all of her glowing eyes, and when she smiled, it was like watching the sunrise. "Human," she said, "you have given us back ourselves. How can we ever repay such a gift?" Marcus felt tears running down his cheeks. "Your Majesty, just seeing you like this, proud, beautiful, free, that's payment enough." But even as he spoke, Marcus knew their work wasn't finished. Breaking the conditioning was only the beginning. Now they had to help an entire species learn to love themselves again. After 3,000 years of enforced self-hatred, the Queen seemed to read his thoughts. "The real work starts now," she said. "We must teach our children what we have learned. We must rebuild our culture around truth instead of lies. We must become who we were always meant to be. And we'll help you," Marcus promised, "for as long as it takes." The Queen's patterns pulsed with what could only be described as joy. "Then let us begin the second revolution, not just seeing ourselves clearly, but teaching others to do the same." Around them, the Zethkari began to glow brighter than they had in 3,000 years, their true beauty finally free to shine. 6 months had passed since the Great Awakening in the palace hall. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Harmony, watching the transformation of Zethkar below. The planet looked completely different now. Where once the Zethkari had hidden, their cities in shadows and mist, now brilliant displays of bioluminescent architecture rose proudly into the sky. The entire world sparkled with millions of lights as the people celebrated their rediscovered beauty. "It's incredible," Captain Elena said, joining Marcus at the viewing window. "I've never seen anything like it." The changes had spread far beyond the palace. Word of Queen Veltara's transformation had traveled across the planet within days. Zethkari communities that had lived in darkness for generations began emerging into the light. Ancient art forms were being rediscovered. Children were learning to be proud of their unique forms instead of ashamed. "Dr. Chen, incoming transmission." "From the Queen," Lieutenant Kim announced from the communication station. The main screen activated, showing Queen Veltara in what had once been called the throne room of shame. Now it was known as the Chamber of Light, and it blazed with the combined patterns of dozens of Zethkari advisors. The Queen herself was almost too bright to look at directly. Her patterns had grown more complex and beautiful than ever, as if her joy was expressing itself through every cell in her body. "My dear human friends," the Queen said, her voice warm with happiness, "I have wonderful news to share. We have received messages from 17 other worlds, planets where our people were scattered long ago by Vialtor relocations. They have heard of our liberation and are asking for help to break their own conditioning." Marcus smiled. This was what he had hoped for. "Your Majesty, are you ready to help them?" "More than ready. We have formed teams of our youngest and brightest, those who adapted quickest to seeing themselves clearly. They will travel to these worlds and share what we have learned, but we need human advisors to go with them, mirrors to reflect back their beauty when the conditioning tries to reassert itself." Captain Elena stepped forward. "We'll provide all the help we can, Your Majesty. Humanity will be honored to assist in liberating other Zethkari communities." The Queen's patterns pulsed with gratitude. There is more. Our historians have uncovered the truth about the Vialtor Empire. They were not the beautiful gods they claimed to be. They were a dying species, ugly in spirit if not in body, who maintained power by convincing other races that only the Vialtor definition of beauty was valid. Marcus felt a chill. Are they still out there? No, the Queen replied, and her patterns darkened slightly. They went extinct 500 years ago, killed by their own hatred and inability to find joy in diversity. But their damage spread across the galaxy like a plague. We estimate that over 200 species were subjected to similar conditioning. The implications were staggering. Across the galaxy, hundreds of alien species might be living in shame, hating their natural forms because of lies planted by long-dead oppressors. Your Majesty, Marcus said, with your permission, I'd like to propose something. What if we created a network, humans and liberated Zethkari working together to find and free these other species? We could call it the Beauty Restoration Project. The Queen's patterns blazed with excitement. Yes, we must find them all. Every creature that has been taught to hate themselves must learn the truth. Over the following weeks, the project took shape. Human ships paired with Zethkari vessels, creating mixed crews that could provide both technical support and living examples of how species could appreciate each other's unique beauty. They would search the galaxy for signs of Vialtor influence and bring liberation to every enslaved mind they found. Marcus found himself assigned as the lead coordinator, working directly with Queen Veltara to plan their missions. As they prepared for the first expedition, he reflected on how much had changed since their first meeting. Human, the Queen said one day as they reviewed star charts in her private study. I have been thinking about that first moment when you called me beautiful. Do you remember? I remember everything about that day, Your Majesty. I was so angry with you. I thought you were mocking me, playing some cruel game, but now I understand. You were seeing me as I truly was, while I was seeing myself through the eyes of my oppressors. Marcus nodded. The hardest part was knowing that you were in pain every time I told you the truth about yourself, but I also knew that sometimes healing hurts before it helps. The Queen moved to stand beside him at the great window that looked out over her transformed capital city. Below them, young Zethkari played in the streets, their patterns bright and joyful as they chased each other through fountains of luminescent water. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months before. I want to tell you something, the Queen said quietly. We have a concept in our old language, from before the Vialtor came. It roughly translates to soul mirror, someone who reflects back your true self when you have forgotten how to see it. You were our soul mirror, Marcus Chen. Marcus felt tears in his eyes. Your Majesty, you honor me beyond words. No, dear friend. You honored us by seeing our worth when we had forgotten it ourselves. The Queen's patterns shifted to soft golds and blues. But there is something else I must tell you. We have received a transmission from a place called the Archive of the Lost, a repository of information about extinct civilizations. They claim to have records of where the Vialtor sent all the species they conditioned. Marcus turned to face her fully. That could be the breakthrough we need. How many species are we talking about? According to preliminary data, nearly 1,000 species across the galaxy. Some may be extinct now, but many are likely still alive, still living, in shame, still believing the lies they were taught. The scope of it was overwhelming. 1,000 species, each one potentially suffering the same psychological torture the Zethkari had endured for 3 millennia. We'll find them, Marcus said firmly. All of them, however long it takes. The Queen's patterns pulsed with determination. Yes. And when we do, we will give them the same gift you gave us, the gift of seeing themselves clearly. As if summoned by their conversation, a young Zethkari entered the study. This was Stellhaven, one of the first to break free from conditioning and now a leader in the liberation movement. Their patterns were bright and confident as they approached. Queen Mother, the first expedition fleet is ready to depart. 5 human ships and 5 of our vessels fully crewed and equipped. The queen stood tall, her natural majesty now enhanced by genuine pride rather than hidden shame. Then let us begin. Send word to the first world on our list, the crystalline singers of Velmoth. Tell them that the age of false ugliness is ending. Marcus activated his communicator to contact the human fleet. All ships, this is Dr. Chen. Prepare for departure. Our mission is simple but crucial. We're going to help some people remember how beautiful they are. As the mixed fleet launched from Zethkar, Marcus watched the planet fall away behind them. The world was still glowing, its people's joy visible even from space as streams of light that painted the entire planet in colors of celebration. No, Marcus said to the Queen who stood beside him on the bridge of their command ship. I think this might be humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy. Not technology or weapons or trade, but simply the ability to see others clearly and reflect back their worth. Queen Veltara's patterns pulsed with warm agreement, and perhaps that is what makes your species truly beautiful, Marcus Chen. You see beauty everywhere and you cannot help but share that vision with others. Marcus smiled the same gentle smile he had worn during their first meeting when he had looked at a being who called herself hideous and seen only wonder. Your Majesty, we're just getting started. Ahead of them, the stars waited, and among those stars were countless beings who had forgotten their own beauty, waiting for someone to remind them of who they truly were. The liberation of the galaxy had begun, one soul mirror at a time.